Hey everybody, it is Greg Kettner with the Humor Lab and episode 5 of my first time. I have a good friend of mine, Drew Tarvin from Mason, Ohio, which is also home of Dan Patrick, George Clooney. So I was debating whether to update Wikipedia this morning. Maybe I'll do it this afternoon.
Yeah, add Drew Tarvin to the list.
Absolutely. Thrilled to have Drew on board today. I've been following for a couple years on Facebook and LinkedIn and watched his TED Talk, which is over millions of views. And so I wanted to sit down and chat with him today about his first time getting on stage. So thank you so much for being here, Drew, and welcome to my first time.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to share a little bit because a lot of people are, I don't know, at least people are surprised. You know, I speak and do comedy for a living, and they're surprised to find that I'm an engineer. And so they're like, "What? How did that happen?" So I'm more than happy to chat about how an engineer like this goes to being behind one of these things.
I guess we'll just jump in right in. When was the first time you either got on stage, either speaking or comedy? And how did you get there? Was it somebody like, hey, you should do this, or was it by accident or planned, or what?
Yeah, so I mean, the real first time that I got on stage was in the 5th grade. We, as a group of students, put on, actually, so it was 6th grade. So in 5th grade, 6th grade, we put on a play that we wrote and everything ourselves, and I was an actor for the 6th grade year. And so that was kind of it, but not for real. The real first time kind of that I in a comedic sense got on stage was in college. So my best friend wanted to start an improv comedy group. He needed people and basically forced me to join in a way. You know, I don't think I ever would have been those people that raise their hand and be like, I'm going to get up there on stage. I'm going to do stand-up or I'm going to do improv. But kind of gently coerced me into doing it. And I was like, oh, it's just me hanging out with friends. And we had no idea what we're doing. We watched Whose Line Is It Anyway and tried to repeat what we saw. And our very first show, I was an RA, and so were a couple of other people in the improv group. And so we're like, oh, we can do this for residence halls. You know, we'll offer it as a late night program for a residence hall. They'll give us a little bit of money. They'll bring some residents to it, and it'll be great. And so we did it for residence hall. This was at Ohio State. I think our first show was in Smith Hall, maybe Stradley Hall. I can't remember which exact hall. And we thought, we were like, okay, we're going to do improv, but we're also going to write some sketches, you know, just so we're have some pre-planned stuff that's going to be funny. And we start with the very first sketch, of which one of the other people in the improv group did not remember any of their lines. And so we would I would say a line, and then he would run over to the script that he had to the side and kind of read it and come back. And so it was a terrible first start. And then we went into improv. And after that show, we never did sketch again. We're we are strictly an improv group. But I remember being nervous 3 days before the event. When the show was coming up, the nerves hit me on a Wednesday, and we were doing the show on Friday. And that lasted for a while. We would do then multiple improv shows, and before every single one, I'd be nervous for a couple of days beforehand. And then after a while, I was nervous only for the, 2 days beforehand, and then only the day of, and then only the afternoon of, and then only right before. So it was something that definitely took some time for me to get used to. Well, and I was just going to say, I think of stand-up as one of the hardest forms of public speaking or types of speaking. And so my introduction into speaking was doing stand-up and helped me. And so, if your next question was doing stand-up, so we did improv for a while, and I started to get used to that. I still wasn't necessarily all that good, right? We had no formal training. And then there's a stand-up competition at Ohio State, and a few of us in the group were like, oh, if we're funny when we make it up off the top of our head, it's got to be easier when we write it down first, right? When we can actually plan what we're going to say. Yeah. And it turns out that, at least for me, stand-up is way harder than improv. And just because expectations are different, it's just you by yourself. It's, one of the things with improv was that I was surrounded by very funny people. So even if I wasn't very funny, or if I was having an off night or whatever, there's other people that could make it good. Whereas stand-up, it's just you by yourself. And so we signed up for the stand-up competition. We practiced with each other a little bit. And that I was incredibly nervous, or even more nervous for than what improv was. But I will say the first time I got a laugh in stand-up was the first time that I was kind of like, okay, maybe I'm at least a little bit funny. Because it was a joke that I wrote. It was a thought that I had. It was delivered just by me. And that was like, oh, okay, maybe I can do this. And that's when I was really kind of addicted to it, when I was like, oh, okay, I can actually be funny.
Yeah. And that first laugh, I remember it was a small pub in Vancouver, and there was 6 people. And I had this joke. I wish I could remember it, but I hit the punchline, and 6 people laughed, and I'm like, I don't even know these people, and they laughed at me, and it was pretty awesome.
I had my first time I did stand up on tape, and it's cringeworthy to watch. But I'm super excited that I have eventually, when I'm like super famous and people will like know, like I've got like everything down, like it'll be a fun kind of like look at where he started video. I don't know if I'm quite there yet to release that type of video, but yeah, it's interesting to go back and see.
Yeah. Now, what about, I know you've done a couple of TED Talks. How did you how'd you go from stand-up in college to like, this is what I want to do? I know you were an engineer, and how did you get from there to speaking about humor and making people's lives better?
Yeah, so after I graduated, I got a degree in computer science and engineering, and I started working at Procter & Gamble as an IT project manager in Cincinnati, Ohio at first, and then in New York. And early on in my career, I started using humor just in my own work, just to make my own work a little bit more fun. And I also still did stand up, and I would send out emails there was a kind of like events group in New York City of, young people at P&G, of just different events going on. And so I would send out, hey, if you want to come see a fellow Procter & Gamble person do stand up, I'm going to do stand up at this local comedy club on this night. And a few months after doing that, I got this email from a woman who I had never met, and she was like, hey, are you a comedian? And I was like, it felt slightly aggressive as an email introduction. And she's like, because I just read this article on humor, the value of humor in the workplace in the Harvard Business Review, and we wanted to kind of do this for our networking group, but we thought rather than just one of us read about it, we thought maybe a comedian would want to come in and talk about humor. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. And she sent over a stack of like research she had already done on humor in the workplace, because I didn't know the like research benefits of it. I saw the benefits that I was getting, but I had no idea other people were talking about it, researching it. And so I put together a PowerPoint presentation that was, 20 minutes of me doing P&G type stand-up, and then another 20 minutes or so of me talking about some of this research that had been collated together around the value of humor in the workplace. And I delivered it for their group, and like immediately fell in love with speaking, because it was stand-up with a message. It was, I still got a chance to make people laugh, but then also the engineer side of me got to like tell them what to do to be more efficient, more effective in the workplace. And from there, that's when I was like, okay, how do I still love stand-up, but how do I do more of this speaking stuff so that I can combine the two? And so I started doing a bunch of stuff internally at P&G. I proclaimed myself the corporate humorist of Procter & Gamble, and started writing a blog about humor in the workplace there, and started writing articles and things, and people seemed to resonate with it. And so then that became Humor That Works as an external function of that, and continued to fall in love with it, and ultimately left P&G and decided to pursue that full time.
What was it like leading up to the TED Talk, and how did you feel after the TED Talk, walking off? Did you like, I nailed it, that was great? Just a little bit around that first TED Talk you did.
Yeah, I mean, so that of course is definitely, nerve-wracking, because, so I did a TEDx talk, which the X part is independently run. So it's not like TED Global. It's not like it was Elon Musk and then me, and then Brene Brown afterwards. Like, I'm not quite there. Talk is still, so the first one that I did was at Ohio State. It was, I was back on campus for an 8th Floor alumni group. The 8th Floor was the improv group that we started. I noticed a TEDx event happening, and I went and asked them about it. And they're like, oh, yeah, we love your story. You should apply for next year. So I applied pretty early on. They loved it and accepted me. And you typically have about a 4-month heads up on
Okay.
that, which is good and bad. I mean, the bad of it is you've got 4 months to kind of be like thinking about it constantly. And yeah, it was incredibly nerve wracking because TEDx is interesting because you can, like, if your video goes really well, it can really boost your career. I mean, you saw this probably maybe earlier on a little bit more, but like people like Sean Acor who are doing fantastic things but lesser known, he does TEDx Bloomington, which I think it's Indiana, and it just is a very good talk. They put that on the TED main stage or whatever. It blows up. He gets millions upon millions of views, and it's all hard work that he was already doing, but it can be a moment that can help infuse a lot of things for your business and for your idea that you want to share. And so there's that additional pressure that comes along with it, as well as that it's only X minutes long. It's very short, and so you have to be, maybe a little bit more scripted than you normally are. Because I know that especially people in the different areas of focus, like I love your focus kind of in background and sales. That's a great thing. And it's not a thing that we spend a tremendous amount of time on. So I think, as we hear from different groups, more than happy to always collaborate and be like, oh, okay, well, if you need humor and sales, Greg is a great, person for that and finding ways to collaborate in that way. Yeah, for sure. Well, and I love what you've been up to in just creating a community for people to be able to jump in and share stuff, and then continuing to put these types of things out there. I think it's a really cool thing, and to me that's what I like, is connecting with fellow people, spreading the joy of humor and seeing how we can kind of help each other and promote the general idea, because we need more of it. So I appreciate you reaching out for sure.
Yeah. Where can people get a hold of you and reach out to you if they want to have you come and do a keynote or lectures or anything online?
Sure. If people are interested in learning at least our approach and style to humor in the workplace, how we kind of like engineer our comedy, they can find out more about our workshops and things like that, our blog posts, etc. at humorthatworks.com. A bunch of free resources there as well. If they want to just follow me or ask specific questions, I'm at Drew Tarvin, DREWTARV as in Victor IN, on all social media, or you can reach out at drew@drewtarvin.com.
Great. Well, thanks again, Drew. Really appreciate it. Looking forward to working with you in the future. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in to my first time with Drew Tarvin. Thanks again, buddy. Take care.
Excellent. Thanks all.
All right.